heavily requested. That is Stephanie Buttermore's all-in videos.
Today I wanted to talk about Stephanie Buttermore, who is a YouTuber here on YouTube. And
a response video to Stephanie Buttermore. Hey!
Hello!
Hello!
You feeling ready to do this, babe?
I feel nervous. It's like the most nervous I've ever been to film a video, but I feel ready.
So it's been 1 year since you've been all in.
I know, isn't that insane? Time flies. It's absolutely crazy.
Do you regret it at all?
I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that there is greatness inside all of us. Best believe what you believe is what you will become. That what ain't given is what you give out gets returned. Life's a gamble, roll the dice. Days on earth ain't promised, we just all living on borrowed time.
A year ago, I never thought I would ever know what it would feel like not to be hungry all the time. A year ago, I went all in hopes of fixing that and to fix my health, something I didn't even know I needed fixing. I wanna feel better, I wanna feel stronger. I was really hopeful that going all in was gonna work for me. I just thought that I would be that one anomaly that this wasn't going to work for because I've lived my life like that for so long. I've always had a big appetite, so I just thought struggling with the feeling of ever feeling full was just something I was gonna have to deal with forever. To be honest, I was willing to try anything. I want to tell you everything so you can really understand how this all started and how hunger has affected me in most of my adult life. So we need to start from the beginning, like all the way to the beginning. So as a kid and into my teens, I played sports. I ate a lot, but it became really apparent that my appetite was unusually large because my dad and I were eating the same amount. I actually didn't grow up with my mom. It was just my dad, sister, and I just ate so much more than my sister, and she was older than me. And my dad is a big guy, like 6'2", pretty jacked, and I was eating just as much as him when I was like 13 years old.
Since Steph was a kid, I mean, as far back as I can remember, she's always had a massive appetite. I did most of the cooking in the house when we were younger. I would portion out something for myself, and then I'd portion out Dad's portion, and then I'd match it for Steph.
I continued to have a big appetite, like through high school, through undergrad, through my master's, but I had never dieted before. But I was already into lifting weights, so usually that keeps your hunger pretty high. But it wasn't until I decided to compete in a bikini competition in 2014 that my extreme hunger was truly born. And I really want to describe to you guys what extreme hunger means because it's going to be the main antagonist of this story. So extreme hunger is not your normal, I had a late lunch so I'm hangry kind of hunger. No. Extreme hunger is a clearly defined phenomenon that you feel like you could just eat and eat and eat without ever wanting or ever feeling like you need to stop.
That's so good.
Like true bottomless pit hunger, like no sense of feeling full, like you've even forgotten what it feels like to feel full. And the only reason you stop eating is because you literally feel like your stomach is gonna pop. But even then, you could eat more. And living this way for years can really impact your quality of life and your happiness, which is what was happening to me. So the genesis of my extreme hunger was truly born back when I did a bikini competition because I had a very restrictive prep. Definitely not a flexible approach. It was a hardcore bro prep. And at the time, I didn't know any better. So this was before evidence-based fitness was as mainstream as it is now. And I was only eating cod and 10 spears of asparagus like 5 times a day, and that's it. I think this adds up to be like 900 calories or something crazy. And I was also doing 45 minutes of HIIT cardio every morning at like 5 a.m. in the morning because I was in grad school. And if I was feeling tired or weak, I was was allowed to have a spoonful of raw, dry oats before I went to go work out because I was still training like 6 times a week. I lost a lot of weight and I lost it really fast. I actually ended up winning my show. I got first in overall and that was all exciting. I don't regret it. I think it was a really good learning experience. And I absolutely know now that there are right and wrong ways to compete. And I know that there are way better strategies than what I did. So absolutely no disrespect to anybody who competes, but that was just my experience. After I competed, I continued to maintain a pretty lean physique, but I had like this crazy appetite that I thought I just had to deal with. I thought this was like pretty common in fitness. Like I thought there was like hard work, sacrifice, determination, like commitment to being fit. And I thought that, you know, everybody in fitness kind of dealt with a certain level of hunger and that was normal. And anyone who's ever competed knows you kind of want to hold on to it like a little bit after the competition because you worked so hard to get there. Your entire perspective of what lean is like forever changed. Being 5 to 10 pounds above stage weight was no longer that lean to me. That was my new normal. And it becomes hard to see yourself like any bigger than that because you're just not used to it. And I didn't start an Instagram until the end of 2014. And I'm sure you know how that goes, like the selfies and the Fitspo. So I kept it up because fitness was a really nice break for me. A nice break from intense cancer biology, 14 hours of bench work and reading 6 papers a day, getting about 3 hours of sleep a night. So it was nice having an outlet. And then fast forward to 2015 when I finally discovered flexible dieting. And then at the end of 2016, I actually met Jeff. And I was still lean, maintaining it for years at that point.
So we had first met on Skype, but I do remember the first time we met in person. I remember when we first hugged, I just remember like noticing how slight you actually were. Obviously thought you were like extremely pretty and beautiful, and I really liked you from the start. But I still remember that, like just how like small and kind of petite you were at the time.
Shortly after we met, I started my YouTube channel. Jeff actually encouraged me to start it because he thought it was unique to be a cancer research PhD student who was into fitness. And an ELISA is an enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. But that entire time, my appetite was still alive and kicking.
Of 6 reps with an RPE.
I remember this like it was yesterday. So Jeff was doing the 10,000 calorie challenge and he really struggled through that. And the entire time I was watching, I was just thinking to myself, like, I could easily do this, no problem.
Really good. I could totally eat that whole pizza. Oh my God, yeah.
You want to do it for me?
So just for kicks and because I genuinely wanted to try it, I did it for my own YouTube channel. It was kind of the thing to do back then and I easily completed it. And unlike Jeff's torturous experience, I thought it was so fun. And it was the first time in a long time that I went to bed full. Like not my normal 50% full, but like actually full. And it was really nice.
I didn't think you'd actually be able to do it just because it was so hard. It was unfathomably hard for me. And I was like, you're significantly smaller than me. So like, there's no way you're gonna be able to do it.
And because that video was so fun, I just wanted to do it again. So cheat days were born.
I know what you're getting?
Yes, everything. And cheat days were days that I could just eat to satiety and it was just fun.
Oh my God.
And it seemed like you guys also really enjoyed them, but I obviously had to return to more clean eating because I wanted to balance my cheat days with my health and fitness goals. And I was in the fitness genre, so I did feel like this pressure that I had to stay fit. But those days were days that I loved because I could eat and feel satisfied and go to bed full. I kind of treated it like an experiment too because my inner scientist wanted to know if cheat days would help sedate my hunger over time.
I'm feeling really full, I'm feeling really satisfied, but not too full.
I got the idea to keep doing them because after the first cheat day, it definitely helped blunt my hunger for a few days. So I hypothesized that over time, they might help me from feeling so hungry all the time. In retrospect, I don't think that they actually worked aside from maybe just like slightly helping, but ultimately they just weren't good enough to keep me satisfied long term. Now, when things really got set in motion was when I decided to do a mini cut at the end of 2018, early 2019. Long-awaited video on the little cut I did back in December, January-ish. And I was also working on my trained abs every day for 6 months video.
Yeah, 6 months later.
And I felt like for this type of content to do well in the oversaturated environment of YouTube, I felt like I had to make sure that I was really lean so the abs that I built would look even more impressive. And that was kind of the last straw, like the straw that broke the camel's back, that I was just sick of it. I was sick and tired of being hungry all the time just so I could be in fitness, like just so I could be successful on this platform. It just wasn't worth it for me anymore, and like I just couldn't see myself sustaining it long term. It was the spring of 2019 that I had a chat with Dr. Nicola Rinaldi about hypothalamic amenorrhea. Hi Nicola, thank you so much for joining me. Which is the lack of menstruation for 3 consecutive months or more. This could be due to undereating, overexercising, stress, genetics, or even a combination of any of those things. I was making a video on the topic and she's an expert in that area of research, so we had a great conversation. But I genuinely didn't think that our conversation would be so profound. I wanted her expertise not only on hypothalamic amenorrhea, but also on how to fix it.
So the quicker you return to sort of that, to fueling your body adequately, the faster things can turn back on again.
And this was something that I actually experienced myself back when I competed, and I knew a lot of my audience was dealing with it. She had this concept of going all in, so full credit nonstop to Nicola, but her version was eating a minimum of 2,500 calories with no maximum, and from what I understand, this is in efforts to get your period back. But it could fix a lot more than just getting your period back. It can help with brittle hair and nails, feeling cold all the time, feeling tired, and fix extreme hunger, which I knew I had, so I was super intrigued. After our chat, a lot of things changed for me. I went down a deep, dark rabbit hole on the internet, just exploring the idea of eating a minimum of X amount of calories. There were a ton of different permutations online of this, but I learned that this was a thing that people did. Like in fitness, it's completely the opposite. It's always about low macros and cutting and getting shredded. So this was a totally new concept for me. As a scientist, the rational part of my brain totally understood why this concept would work and how your body defends its natural set weight. But the irrational part of my brain thought, well, it probably wouldn't work for me. My hunger signals are probably just messed up genetically. I've always been a hungry kid. I thought I would be the one exception, like the one person that would just eat themselves into obesity. So I tried to find a few examples of people that this actually worked for, and a few of them were actually past competitors. The common theme was that they would just eat to satiety every single day, and at the beginning they would be experiencing extreme hunger, so they would gain a lot of weight. However, their weight would kind of plateau because they would no longer feel nearly as hungry after months of eating thousands of calories. And then, even longer after that, their weight would actually go back down to its natural set weight because your appetite has been kind of normalized after that, and it goes down to a normal appetite and your weight comes down with it. And when I say set weight is not like an exact number. It's more like a range that fluctuates throughout your life and is predetermined by your genetics and your physiology. So they would go through this process of weight gain and then weight stabilization, and they would come out the other side with normal hunger and satiety cues and pretty normal eating behavior, no longer feeling that extreme hunger that they used to have. And I wanted that. I wanted that so badly. I would just see that and be like, I want to do that. Like, that's what I need to do. But regardless of how badly I wanted to do this, I was pretty terrified. I had gotten to a point that I was just like, this is who I am on the internet. What's gonna happen when that changes? I went back and forth for a long time. Like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna explain it to them and they'll totally understand, to, no, they won't understand, this will be a complete disaster, you have no idea what you're doing, to, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go all in, but I'm basically gonna quit social media so they don't have to watch me go through this. To nobody's surprise, gaining weight in public is extremely scary, especially on YouTube and especially in fitness, because people are savage. And I thought I would just be run off the platform, losing all of my fitness credibility, and I would no longer be in the fitness genre anymore because I didn't belong there, not knowing at the time that my channel would evolve to a genre of its own. So I felt like I could deal with the weight gain, but I knew I was gonna have to endure a lot of criticism. I had been on YouTube long enough to know how hard this would be.
So speaking of pigs,
What did you think when I told you I was going all in?
I was surprised to hear that you say that you wanted to do it, but I was also really excited about it. Like, you would probably remember from the beginning, I was like very approving of that decision. I thought that it was what was best for you. And I was more or less just like, I guess it was like a combination of being happy and also being kind of like excited. Like this scientist in me was kind of like curious to see how it would play out for you. It was always a positive thing in my eyes.
It was honestly Jeff that gave me the final push to go through with it. He made me realize that this was the best way to do it, and that's what I decided. I would do it as openly and as honestly as possible, and to just share the journey with you. I called it going all in from Dr. Rinaldi's version of it, but I had my own version in mind, and it was exactly how it sounded.
So when Steph first told me she was gonna go all in, she was really nervous. She had big news to tell me. Steph is the type of person that is very disciplined, very methodical. It's a huge reason why she's accomplished everything that she's done, and she's applied that same mentality to food, you know, for as long as I can remember. I was just so excited because I love to cook and I love food. I think I was more excited for me than for her at first, because that's what you want to do with your best friend. You want to eat with them.
So at the beginning, being able to eat all of that food was honestly glorious. I was just so hungry and was just ready to eat. I remember my first night officially being all in. We were actually watching the 2019 NBA Finals.
Turns the corner for the win!
And I ordered Uber Eats, and I ordered spaghetti and meatballs and garlic bread, which, if you didn't know, is one of my favorite things to eat. And I was actually all in for a whole week before I announced it in my first all-in video. And just in the first week alone, I gained 10 pounds. Honestly tell you that I have actually been all in this whole past week. And it's crazy to look back on, because after I gained the first 10 pounds, and I had to tell you guys, I felt so bad about my body. And in retrospect, I see that person, that 1 week all in Stephanie, and she was still super tiny. And that's how it went for the whole journey. I would always catastrophize how I looked, and I would always look back on it and be like, it wasn't that bad. It's all perspective.
So today is the day that I actually posted the video about my all-in journey. So today is been an emotional roller coaster because I actually had no idea how you guys were gonna respond.
At the beginning, I just wanted to eat all day, every day, and go to bed full every night. And the best part was that that was what I was supposed to do. So I didn't actually feel any guilt. Guilt actually came later in my journey, but the beginning, it was this new exciting adventure that I was on. And I started out in my first month abiding by a 75% whole foods rule that at the time I thought was really smart, and I genuinely love whole foods. I basically liked everything and anything at that time, but I was just kind of learning as I went along. So I actually didn't stick to this rule after the first month because it was just so hard on my digestion. Imagine, I was eating 4 to like 7-ish thousand calories a day, every day, like averaging 5,000 calories. So with eating predominantly whole foods, my belly would just feel like rock hard every day. And in the first month, I actually gained the most weight out of every month throughout the entire journey. I gained 18 pounds in the first month. After the first month, I kind of just ate whatever, which still included mostly whole foods, but it was no longer a rule because I was really determined to learn how to eat intuitively, to teach my body to eat when I'm hungry and to stop when I'm full. But even in months 2 and 3, with a slightly decreased appetite, I was still eating a lot of calories. And I actually wasn't tracking anymore because Tracking thousands of calories of food every day is honestly exhausting. And it was also making me realize how much food I was eating, which was kind of starting to make me feel a bit guilty. So all the more reason to stop. But I want to particularly emphasize how important months 2 and 3 were for me. I actually think these were the most important months of the entire journey, and I think these were the months that I made the most progress. It was a time that I truly succumbed to eating whatever I wanted, and I took a huge step back from training almost altogether. And this wasn't really on purpose. Jeff and I actually had a trip to Australia for a UEBC fitness conference.
You ready? Give a thumbs up.
After that, purely for vacation, we were going to Bali. A new bikini that I'm going to be bringing with me to Bali and Australia.
Probably not gonna be wearing this in Australia because apparently it's winter there. That's bizarre to me.
Partially packed. At least Jeff's is completely empty.
But I actually ended up getting sick at the start of our travels.
I think I mentioned it. I'm kind of sick, by the way. I got sick like the day we got here.
So while we were traveling, I just didn't train. And it was also a time that, man, I was eating the most amazing food. I ate amazing food in Melbourne, and I ate whatever was put in front of me at our Airbnb in Bali by 2 lovely chefs that we had.
This is my girl right here. Dewey's the best. She has made Bali the best experience of all time.
I actually still think about them all the time, but I just basked in the glory of vacation and was resting because I was really sick. And I'm really glad that these chain of events happened, even though they weren't on purpose, but I really think that my appetite was so much lower when I got back from that trip than it was before I left. I feel like I'm not nearly as hungry anymore. I'm gonna say that again for the people in the back. And I just felt like I could really feel the process of being all in take effect. I was no longer feeling like a bottomless pit anymore. That dissipated in month 4, and just a combination of all the food and rest, I think was really good for me and probably sped up my journey, in my opinion. And without that trip, I probably wouldn't have been so liberal with my food intake because I just can't cook like that. And I probably wouldn't have rested because I wouldn't have gotten sick. After I recovered from being sick, I did return to normal training after that because I did have strength goals still, but I really think that break was really good for me. And from that point on, I also really adopted eating like 3 to 4 proper meals throughout the day instead of literally constantly eating from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. But I do have to say, one thing that was actually the worst during this time was my swelling. This is when the puffiness really started. The swelling was everywhere, but I think it was really obvious in my face, my midsection, and my ankles. If I had a definitive swollen phase, it started in month 2 and went through, man, like probably month 6. And my swollen phase directly correlated to my sweaty phase. So I was swollen, inflamed, and hot and sweaty all the time. Over the course of months 2, 3, and 4, I gained another 17-ish pounds because at my 4-month update, I was about 35 pounds up. And I'm really not trying to place so much emphasis on like the numbers and my weight. It was honestly one of the only quantitative metrics that I had. And I think it conveyed to you guys that never at any point in my journey did I try to prevent any of the weight gain. So I think saying these numbers can be helpful in that regard, I think. I also think it shows the natural progression of how the body regains weight, and my appetite and weight gain were actually very linked. As I gained more weight, my appetite decreased with it in tandem. So I just used my weight as a visual metric. What did you think of how I looked at this time?
So I personally think that you always think that you look worse than I think you do. So like hearing you retell that, you're describing yourself as this like just swollen monster, but like you didn't look like that at all to me. And like when you feel sweaty or you feel like you're holding water, it feels like it's so much. But to me, I kind of saw this change just sort of gradually happen. So I didn't really notice this phase the same that you did. I still thought that you looked beautiful at this time, honestly.
After month 4, I slowly gained another like 5 to 7 pounds over the course of months 5 and 6. I remember after about the 6-month mark, my weight hit a plateau and I hit my peak weight of having gained 42 pounds. And 42 pounds ended up being like the most weight I gained throughout this entire past year. And at that point, I was really not hungry anymore. I feel like 6 months was a good marker of when I had very distinct hunger and satiety cues. So with eating proper meals throughout the day, I kind of felt like I was like entering normal eating behavior territory, but I was still really swollen, really puffy, and really sweaty. It was all very sexy. This was actually a really hard time for me. My weight was the highest I had ever seen it on a scale in my entire life, and I was having pretty regular breakdowns at this point. I just felt so badly about myself. And if there was ever a time that I wanted to quit and hide away from social media, maybe even start dieting so I didn't feel so big, it was 6 months in. And I was getting comments telling me that I was obese now and that my journey was a failure. And I think this is because in the minds of viewers, 6 months might seem like a really long time, but that's not long enough to complete an entire journey like this. But they obviously didn't know that, so it was one of the first times that I kind of felt like people were giving up on me.
I feel like it's just too much.
So I just wrote in my journal, as I always do, that you can't let this ruin all of your hard work. You've made it so far, and you promised yourself you would do this. Please, Stephanie, like, don't forget your why. I would say those things over and over and over again. And what was even harder was dealing with the comments from the people that you do know and that you do care about and that you do love. Those comments, those hurt the most.
She had a few things to say about my weight gain, and I guess I didn't imagine it would affect me so badly. It did really bother me, I guess. And the things that she was saying was basically everything that I'm feeling.
So to start with, our mom has good days and bad days. This unfortunately was just a night where she was having a bad day. We had just eaten dinner and we were just talking and relaxing and just blurted out saying without any thought. I think through the whole all-in process, it was really tough for her, you know, hearing all the critique from everybody, but I don't think it actually hit her until my mom made that comment that night. That was the first time it hit her hard.
You guys know how close my mom and I are, and she is literally like the sweetest human being I know.
Hi, YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Oh,
but she is mentally ill, and I know the ins and outs of her personality, trust me. I've been taking care of her since I found her when I was 16, after not seeing her for many years. So I'm very familiar with her ups and downs, and I know I shouldn't have taken it so seriously. I do know that, but everything that she was saying was everything that I was feeling, and it just hit me where it hurt. After about 8 months is when the swelling finally started to go down.
I'm wearing a short sleeve crop top. This is something that I haven't been ready for in a long time.
My weight wasn't budging. I was still plateaued, but at least my swelling was going down, so visually I looked a lot less puffy. My cheeks didn't take up my whole face anymore, and my ankles wouldn't swell around my socks. Keep in mind, I was wearing compression socks all the time, like during the day and night, to help with the swelling. And my weight was plateaued for about 3 months. So it was probably plateaued from months 6 to month 9. So month 9, or February 2020, is when my weight has slowly come down to now, May 2020. And just to be clear, like, weight loss is not the goal. I just want to give you some context for this journey, that it was like this triphasic or 3-phase process, if you will. Phase 1, you're really hungry and there's a lot of weight gain. Phase 2, you're less hungry and your weight hits a plateau, so it doesn't move for a few months. And then phase 3, you're less hungry than phase 2, and your weight actually starts to decrease towards your set weight. And that can take like however long. So from my highest weight, 42 pounds up to now, May 2020, I've lost about 13 pounds over the course of those 3 to 4 months. And I feel very comfortable here. Like, I don't feel like I need to lose any more. Again, like, that's not the goal. Also, keep in mind that none of my weight loss was due to anything other than just my decreased appetite. I was not trying to lose weight. I was not doing anything special or different. I didn't do any cardio. I went for occasional walks, but I've always done that. I just ate until I felt full, and then I would stop. But since February, my appetite has been pretty low relative to how it used to be. I actually randomly tracked one day, and I think I'm eating roughly like 2,800 calories a day, something like that. Keep in mind, like, some days my appetite is lower than others. So I actually did this twice, so I thought this was really telling. I cooked food, and then I would completely forget about it.
These have been in there for 2 days.
That's great. You did it again.
Did it again. I'm either getting dumber or just less concerned with food.
And I would find it in the air fryer like 2 days later. And I actually don't think that my weight loss has anything to do with like weight training or exercising, because I've actually been training significantly less since February because I've had a few things going on. So at the very end of January, I had a vein ablation done. You guys might remember, but I had this done in both of my greater saphenous veins, basically like the inner thigh of both of my legs, because I was having some issues in those veins and I couldn't train my lower body at all after that. And then shortly after, I went and had LASIK done, which was a complete disaster and way more invasive than it should have been because I actually had some complications. And then after that, I couldn't train for a while because I was just so disoriented from not being able to see out of my right eye. Like, I felt like the world was always tipping and I always felt nauseous. So I took some time off from training, but then we had a global pandemic and I've been having to stick to at-home training, which is good, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely not as ideal for those like really heavy compound movements because I was focused on my strength. So I obviously don't have like a full deadlift platform or squat rack at my house. So my strength training has had to take a step back. And I'm actually still training at home, even though gyms are open here. So I haven't gone back to the gym yet. But I really wanna say for the record that before all of this stuff happened with my leg vein ablation and all that stuff, before all that, I was making amazing strength progress. Like, my lifts were looking so good. So I don't wanna take away from all the progress I made before this.
It's good.
So I know I mentioned that at the 6-month mark, I had a really hard time. So that was probably the time that I really wanted to quit. But trust me, I had way more meltdowns than just that. Like, that was just when it was the worst. At the beginning, I think I would have a meltdown like once a week. I had my first one right before I left for that Australia Bali trip. And I had a couple in Bali, I'm not gonna lie.
So I'll get one time feeling down. So you know that it happens. There's a belt that is supposed to go here, it doesn't fit.
And yeah, like at least once a week I would have one. And luckily I haven't had one in a long time. I actually can't even remember the last time I've had one. But at the beginning, I just had so many bad body image days. I also just had so many doubts that this was even gonna work. And I would just be like an example of this massive failure. Of course that didn't happen, and having rational people by my side was really essential.
As a science-minded person, I really truly appreciate you kind of bringing that science mind to.
The weight gain was definitely tough. My clothes not fitting me anymore, or clothes that I literally just bought no longer fitting me, that was hard. Oh, and this might seem really random, but whenever I would put on self-tanner and I couldn't reach like my back, which I could easily do when I was lean, and like the realization that I had to spread so much tanner over so much surface area, I had a few cry sessions doing that. Jeff would be like consoling me and like rubbing self-tanner on my back. Good times. And something that was actually one of the hardest parts was dealing with the backlash that I got online.
She got fat.
When I first started, like, I don't think it fazed me that much. I was just like, F the haters, they don't know me, they don't matter. But you can only hear something so many times before it really starts to get to you.
You're just gonna get fatter and fatter, and you're gonna go down the self-destructive spiral.
So you also had blood work done too, right?
Yeah, so during my journey, I got blood work done 3 times. At the beginning, the 3-month mark, and at the 9-month mark. I was really interested to see some improvements with my female reproductive hormones, which started a bit low, as you can imagine, because I started out like really lean. I remember making my 4-month update video, and I thought that these improvements were kind of minor.
The numbers did improve slightly, but they were still in the lower end of the normal range.
But Dr. Rinaldi actually reached out to me because she watched the video, and she told me that I should be encouraged by even like those minor improvements.
How are you?
And because I did gain quite a bit of weight, I did want to make sure like other things were looking normal too. Like I wanted to check and make sure like other health markers were also normal. And thankfully all of those were good. And I genuinely think I would have continued to see progress in my female reproductive hormones if I didn't go on a hormonal birth control last September, which of course changes all of that. So before that, I actually had a copper IUD as my birth control modality, and I was just experiencing so much pain. Like I had really sharp pelvic pain, especially around the time of my cycle. I went to see a doctor, and my doctor decided to remove my copper IUD, and he started me on the pill. So that's the reason why I did that. But I really didn't want to. I wanted to keep my form of birth control like non-hormonal, which a copper IUD doesn't affect your hormones, but that was just the best option that my doctor had for me. So because I went on the pill, I did want to have a chat with Dr. Nicola Rinaldi again, and I wanted to ask her how going on the pill would affect these hormones.
I unfortunately had to remove my copper IUD, and I ended up going on the pill. I'm on the generic of Yaz, which is pretty standard. I obviously didn't expect to see improvements, and I didn't. So they were actually lower. Just wanted to get you to talk about maybe like what birth control would do to things like estradiol, FSH, and LH.
So birth control pills basically suppress your whole system. So it absolutely suppresses FSH, LH. You know, it provides sort of a low level of estradiol and progesterone, depending on which one you're on throughout the cycle. Depending on where you are in the cycle, they have different functions. So with the birth control pills, it's a low enough level that it basically suppresses ovulation, and therefore, you know, it's keeping your FSH and LH quite low, and your natural estradiol and progesterone are suppressed as well.
So even though I couldn't keep tabs on these hormones in my 9-month blood work, I, like I said, wanted to keep tabs on things like my cholesterol and my metabolic panel. Like I said, all of those things are normal, so I was really happy about that. But I do want to make note that if you're not using a hormonal birth control, or if you're trying to get pregnant, those female reproductive hormones are numbers that you should be paying attention to. But in the end, 1 year later, everything is great, I feel great, and most importantly, I'm healthy.
The idea of healthy equals a look, I think, is really problematic. To me, healthy equals functioning well. So that, you know, that can be at a wide range of sizes and shapes and looks and everything. You know, there is this idea that, you know, even on the upper side of body size, like there's such a wide range of what can be healthy and what can be unhealthy.
Reflecting back, what I ultimately wanted to accomplish was to improve my health, and I definitely think I accomplished that. And I don't quite feel like this journey is over. From what I understand, it can take 3, 4, or more years, but I do feel really proud of myself that I've made it this far. My goal when I originally started this journey was to improve my energy, fix being cold all the time, feel happier, not be so food focused, and to fix my extreme hunger. And yeah, I did all that for sure. Be honest, do you think I'm different now? Do you think I'm happier?
Yeah, I've noticed your personality change a nice bit. You do definitely seem happier, just like on an hour-to-hour basis throughout the day. And I do think it's improved our relationship as well. Things are just a lot easier for us now. So much of the time we spend together does center around food. I mean, that's just the way socializing is in general. And I find we enjoy each other's time a lot more now. I do think, yeah, your personality has changed in several ways, but one of which would be that you're definitely happier now.
Steph is so much happier now. Steph's always been a happy person, but ever since this change, her mood is so much lighter and carefree. You could just tell she just enjoys things more. You know the Snickers commercial where the whole time they're like, oh, you're not yourself when you're hungry. Then you give them a Snickers and they're better. It's like Stephanie's been stuck in a super long Snickers commercial and nobody could give her a Snickers. And it's like, finally Steph gets her Snickers and she's so happy and she's the real Steph now.
Not to sound too dramatic, but this journey was one of the scariest things I've ever done. Mostly because there was just so many unknowns, which is exactly why I'm so happy that I documented it. And I couldn't have done it without you. You guys helped me through some of the darkest times I went through this past year, and I don't think I could possibly describe to you how much of an impact you've made on my journey, but just know that you have. A year ago, I promised you guys that it would still stay Stephanie, that it would still be me throughout this journey. But I would argue that I think I'm a more improved version of my previous self. I think I've evolved a lot this past year, and I really hope that you guys will stick around to see how the rest of this journey unfolds. And I know it's only been a year, but I definitely think I'm on the right track, and I can just see that light growing brighter and brighter every single day. Before I know it, I'm just gonna be living my life, like not thinking about food or my next meal or maintaining a lean physique because the internet or society wants me to. Those days are in the past, and I've never been happier.
Do you regret it at all?
Not even for a second.